What would you do if the only thing standing between your baby and a lifetime of poverty was someone else's life? Tonight's story isn't about love or dreams or a lucky break that changed everything overnight. It's about a 16-year-old girl from the south side of Chicago who believed that money could fix anything. That luxury cars could erase your past. That diamond chains could buy respect. That stepping into a Range Rover meant you'd finally made it out. But what happens when the path to Escalades, Rolex watches, and penthouse views starts in a basement with zip ties? This is the story of Suelen, a pregnant teenager who went from scrolling through Instagram fantasies of Lamborghinis and iced-out jewelry to holding a gun in a ransom room where somebody's life depended on her next decision. A story about ambition, illusion, rejection, and the moment when chasing status stops being a dream and becomes a crime. If you think money can't change who you are, wait until you see what it made her become. So before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because stories like this, they don't usually end the way you expect. Suelen grew up in a place where dreams didn't usually make it past the front porch. In Southside Chicago, broken streetlights flickered like tired hopes every single night. Her world was sirens, corner stores, overdue bills, and whispered prayers before sleep. Still, she used to stare at passing luxury cars like they were pieces of heaven on wheels. Black Escalades, tinted Benz trucks, chrome wheels spinning like destiny in motion. To her, money wasn't just comfort, it was escape, power, and finally being seen. She believed somewhere out there was a life dripping in gold just waiting. At 16, she already knew what it felt like to be trapped by reality. Pregnant by a guy who promised forever but disappeared by winter break. No savings, no family safety net, no real plan besides survival mode. Scrolling Instagram became her daily therapy, watching girls flex jewelry and cash. Stacks of money, designer bags, iced-out chains shining under LA sunlight. She'd whisper, "That's gonna be me," like a silent contract with destiny. But deep down, she didn't know the price of chasing that kind of dream. See, in neighborhoods like hers, ambition walks a dangerous tightrope. You either hustle legally and wait 10 years for your shot, or you take shortcuts that come with shadows attached. And Suelen was tired of waiting on minimum wage promises. She didn't want to count pennies, she wanted to count hundreds. Didn't want bus passes, she pictured herself inside a Range Rover. Didn't want thrift store earrings, she wanted diamonds on her neck. Every day on her way to school, she'd pass a dealership in downtown. Ferraris parked like trophies behind spotless glass walls. Lamborghinis low enough to kiss the pavement with arrogance. To some people, those were just cars. To her, they were exits. Exits from the hood, from judgment, from being nobody. From wearing the same sneakers 3 years in a row. From watching her mom cry over rent notices again. Her best friend once told her, "Money changes everything." And Suelen believed that more than she believed in God. She imagined stepping out of a matte black Rolls-Royce someday. Hair done, nails perfect, Cartier bracelets hugging her wrist. People staring, whispering, wondering where she came from. Not knowing the nights she slept hungry before this. Not knowing the baby she carried would need diapers soon. That illusion started shaping her decisions little by little. Suddenly school felt like a waste of precious time. Homework couldn't buy formula or baby clothes. Dreams of college felt slow compared to fast money online. She started thinking about quick flips and easy cash. Thinking maybe crime wasn't evil, just misunderstood survival. Thinking maybe status was worth any kind of sacrifice. And that's when Wesley, her ex-military older brother figure, pulled up beside her in a black Dodge Charger one night. Engine rumbling like trouble dressed as opportunity. Gold chain swinging against his chest with quiet confidence. He asked if she knew her way around the internet. And she smiled, already sensing the smell of money. Not knowing that question would change everything next. That Dodge Charger didn't just look expensive, it sounded like a way out. Wesley leaned back in his seat like a man who'd seen real money move. Not paychecks, but stacks wrapped in rubber bands inside gym bags. The kind of money that could buy luxury cars overnight in cash. The kind of money that made diamond chains feel lightweight. The kind of money that turned nobodies into somebody real fast. And Suelen felt her ambition wake up like never before. At home, things were getting worse by the day. Her mom was picking up double shifts at a laundromat. The fridge hummed louder than it ever had, because it was empty. Baby clothes were now something she Googled at night in fear. Hospital bills were already stacking before birth even happened. And every time she felt the baby kick, reality punched back. Dreams of luxury were now mixed with desperation. Instagram stopped being inspiration, it became torture. Girls her age riding inside Lambos with leather seats. Posting wrist shots of Rolex watches and iced-out rings. Trips to Miami, rooftop dinners, private jets in the background. All funded by unknown sources nobody talked about openly. But in the hood, everybody already knew the real game. Money moved fast when rules were ignored. She started doing mental math every single night. Minimum wage would barely cover diapers and rent. College was years away. Luxury was now or never. She didn't want her baby growing up like she did. Sharing beds, skipping meals, dodging eviction notices. She wanted Escalade school pickups someday. Not city buses and food stamps. So when Wesley called her again, she picked up fast. His voice sounded calm, almost businesslike. He talked about opportunity, digital hustle, real payouts. Said all she needed was to know her way online. No guns, no drugs, no street corners involved. Just information, timing, and silence. And Suelen felt hope wrapped in illusion again. Hope that maybe this was her destiny calling. Hope that maybe crime wasn't always dirty. Hope that maybe luxury didn't always come from sweat. Maybe it came from knowing the right people. Maybe from taking the right risks. Maybe from doing one wrong thing once. For a lifetime of comfort after. She stared at her cracked phone screen quietly. Her reflection looking back more tired than ever. Thinking about the Ferrari dealership again. Thinking about Cartier bracelets on her wrist. Thinking about money solving everything. And whispering to herself, "What's the worst that could happen?" Wesley pulled up again that Friday night, engine low and confident. Streetlights bouncing off the Charger's glossy black paint. He didn't waste time with small talk this time. Just handed her a burner phone through the window. Said, "This right here is where real money starts. Not the kind you earn, the kind you take." And Suelen felt her heart race like never before. Inside that phone were names, locations, routines. People who drove luxury cars without bodyguards. People who wore jewelry worth more than her whole block. People who posted their own movements online for validation. $1 million lives broadcasted through Instagram stories. Mansions in Beverly Hills, penthouses in downtown Atlanta. And they were easier to find than she imagined. He explained it like it was business. No yelling, no threats, just calm logistics. Said it was all about targeting the right status. Rich kids with no street awareness. Trust fund babies flashing money on Rodeo Drive. Crypto traders bragging about Lambos in Miami. Easy targets dressed in designer confidence. Her job would be simple at first. Catfish accounts, digital conversations, fake meetups. Building trust with luxury-obsessed strangers online. Pretending she was part of that lifestyle too. Showing them pictures of cars she didn't own. Jewelry she'd never touched in real life. Selling a fantasy to catch one. And once they believed it, they'd drive themselves into the trap. Pulling up in Teslas, G-Wagons, Mustangs. Expecting a night with a pretty face. Instead of duct tape and dark rooms. Instead of ransom calls and cold fear. Instead of silence behind locked doors. Suelen swallowed hard as he spoke. This wasn't Instagram hustle anymore. This was real crime with real consequences. But also real money, fast money. Money that could change her baby's future. Money that could buy her way out. Money that could rewrite her story. He looked at her one last time. Said, "You want luxury, or you want struggle. No in-between. No safe middle-class dream. Just diamonds or eviction notices. Range Rover or bus passes. Cartier or cracked plastic bracelets." And she knew what choice she was about to make. The first time always feels unreal, like stepping into somebody else's life. Suelen sat in the back seat of a rented black Tahoe with tinted windows, her fingers trembling while fake nails tapped against her cracked iPhone screen. The Instagram profile she created now had over 2,000 followers. All stolen pictures, luxury cars, designer outfits, diamond necklaces. Private jet selfies downloaded from influencers in Los Angeles. A whole fake life built to attract real money. The target was a 22-year-old crypto investor from Miami. His page was full of Lamborghinis, rooftop parties, and wrist shots. Rolex watches shining under nightclub neon lights. Stacks of cash fanned out on marble kitchen counters. Comments flooded with people calling him successful. But Wesley called him something else. He called him careless. For 3 weeks she talked to him every night. Voice notes with a soft tone she didn't even recognize. Saying she lived in Atlanta but visited Chicago often. Pretending she drove a white Mercedes G-Wagon. Pretending she loved sushi, rooftop bars, fast cars. Pretending she wasn't scared of anything. Pretending luxury was normal for her too. The meetup was scheduled for 9:30 p.m. A quiet Airbnb in a nice neighborhood. Soft lighting, scented candles, fake wine bottles. Everything designed to lower suspicion instantly. Everything designed to look like wealth lived there. But behind the bedroom door, Vane and Jacare were already waiting. When his red Tesla Model S pulled into the driveway, Suelen felt her stomach tighten around the baby inside her. She adjusted her gold-plated fake bracelet nervously, thinking about diapers, thinking about hospital bills, thinking about Escalades instead of city buses, thinking about her mom's tired eyes, thinking about money solving everything. He knocked twice like they planned, smiling with expensive veneers when she opened the door. Cologne hitting the air before his voice did. Diamond studs blinking under hallway light. Gucci belt buckle shining like a trophy. He stepped inside expecting champagne, and found a gun pressed against his ribs instead. Within seconds, the illusion shattered. Zip ties cutting circulation off his wrists. Tape across his mouth swallowing his screams. Luxury turned into terror in under a minute. His Rolex scratched against the hardwood floor. And Suelen stood frozen watching it all begin, not knowing there was no turning back now. The basement didn't look like something from the movies. No dramatic chains or concrete walls dripping water. Just an empty suburban storage room with bad lighting. But fear doesn't need aesthetics to feel real. They tied him to a metal chair in the corner. Designer sneakers now covered in dust. Luxury reduced to helplessness overnight. His phone was the first thing they took. Still buzzing with notifications from investors. Crypto alerts, stock updates, missed FaceTime calls. His world was still moving without him. Money still flowing somewhere else. Friends still posting parties online. While he sat blindfolded in silence. They removed his Rolex carefully. Placed it inside a Ziploc bag like evidence. Jacare joked it could buy a used Camaro. Vane said maybe even a down payment on a Bentley. Everything became a price tag now. His life translated into assets. His freedom into negotiation value. Wesley made the first ransom call calmly. Voice steady like he'd done this before. Demanding $500,000 wired by morning. No cops, no games, no delays. Or things would get ugly real fast. The kind of ugly money couldn't reverse. The kind of ugly nobody posts online. Meanwhile, Suelen stayed quiet in the corner. Watching this rich life fall apart slowly. Watching status crumble into desperation. His diamond chain now lying on the floor. His expensive jacket soaked in sweat. His confidence leaking with every hour. Luxury meant nothing down here. She approached him once they left the room. He smelled like cologne and panic. Whispered through the tape for water. Promised he could pay even more. Promised he had connections everywhere. Promised he could make this disappear. Promised money solved everything. And for a moment, she believed him. Believed in that lifestyle again. Believed in the fantasy he represented. Believed maybe he was her exit. But when he looked into her eyes, he didn't see a savior, he saw danger. Later that night, when the house finally went quiet, Suelen came back down those basement stairs alone. Her footsteps softer than her racing thoughts, the dim light barely catching her silhouette. She removed the tape from his mouth slowly. Not out of kindness, but curiosity. Curiosity about the life he lived. Up close, he didn't look like Instagram anymore. No filters, no angles, no captions. Just a scared kid in designer clothes. Diamond studs still blinking under cheap light. A gold Cuban link chain resting on his chest. Something she once thought meant power. Now just looking like weight. He started talking immediately. Saying he could triple the ransom amount. Saying he'd buy her a Range Rover himself. Saying he knew people in Beverly Hills. Could get her designer deals, luxury condos. Jewelry that wasn't fake or gold-plated. A life she wouldn't have to steal again. For a second, she imagined it. Riding shotgun in his Lamborghini Urus. Cartier bracelets hugging her wrist. Baby in the back seat of an Escalade. Dinner reservations instead of eviction notices. Penthouse views instead of broken blinds. Money fixing everything overnight. So she leaned closer. Voice softer than before. Asked him if he'd really take her away. Away from Chicago. Away from poverty. Away from bus passes and food stamps. Away from who she used to be. And that's when he laughed. A quiet, nervous, almost pitiful laugh. Said girls like her were temporary fun. Said his parents would never allow it. Said she was just another mistake waiting. Said she didn't belong in his world. Said luxury had standards. Something inside her snapped silently. Not loud, just permanent. The illusion shattered in seconds. Money wasn't an invitation. Jewelry wasn't acceptance. Status didn't erase her past. And now, she wanted something else. When Wesley came back downstairs, he didn't ask questions right away. He just looked at Suelen standing there in silence while the hostage stared back at her with a mixture of fear and something worse. Disgust, the kind that rich people learn early when they think poverty is contagious. And that look hit deeper than any insult because in that exact moment she wasn't seeing him anymore as a walking ransom check or a guy with access to luxury cars, private investments and offshore accounts. She was seeing every single Instagram post she had ever saved of girls stepping out of G-Wagons, every iced-out chain she dreamed of wearing, every stack of money she imagined holding one day, and all of it suddenly felt like it had been locked behind a glass wall she would never be allowed to break through no matter how hard she tried to hustle her way inside. He kept talking even after Wesley grabbed his jaw to shut him up, mumbling things about lawyers, about how his dad's firm owned entire buildings in Manhattan, about how his mom donated millions to charity foundations in Beverly Hills, about how people like them didn't mix with people like her unless it was for entertainment purposes or late-night mistakes that were never meant to leave the hotel room. And every single word landed like a hammer on the fragile illusion she had been building ever since she first imagined herself inside a black Rolls-Royce instead of on a crowded city bus. Because now it wasn't just about money anymore, it was about status, about acceptance, about realizing that even if she somehow bought every diamond necklace she had ever wanted, she would still be introduced as someone from the wrong side of town. Upstairs, the sound of the TV masked everything, a basketball game playing loudly while Vane laughed about betting money he didn't have yet, already planning what kind of luxury car he was going to finance with his share of the ransom once the wire transfer cleared, talking about matte black Chargers, lifted Escalades, custom Mustangs with red leather interiors, all the things people in the hood see as proof that you made it out alive. But down here in the basement, the air felt heavier with every breath Suelen took, because now she wasn't thinking about baby formula or hospital bills or even the eviction notice sitting on her kitchen table anymore. She was thinking about how that laugh had just erased every fantasy she had ever built around the idea that money alone could buy her a new identity. The gun Wesley placed in her hand didn't feel real at first, not in the cinematic way movies make it look where everything goes silent and dramatic music plays in the background. Instead it felt awkward, heavy in a practical way, like holding a tool she didn't know how to use properly. The cold metal pressing against her palm while the hostage's eyes widened in disbelief, as if he suddenly understood that his stock portfolio and luxury lifestyle couldn't negotiate with this kind of situation anymore, because this wasn't a boardroom deal or a real estate investment gone wrong. This was a girl from Southside Chicago whose dreams had just been laughed at, whose ambition had just been dismissed, whose entire illusion of escape had just been reduced to a temporary fantasy. Wesley didn't shout, he didn't rush her, he just nodded once like a mentor watching a student reach the final test, and somewhere upstairs a sports commentator yelled about a last-second three-pointer while the hostage began promising everything again, promising bank transfers, promising brand-new Range Rovers, promising designer jewelry shipped overnight from Miami boutiques, promising that he could make her rich in ways she couldn't even imagine if she just let him walk out of here alive. But now every promise sounded empty because they came wrapped in that same laugh from earlier, the same invisible reminder that even if she accepted the deal, she would always be someone he settled for in secret rather than someone he introduced in daylight. Her finger rested against the trigger longer than she expected, and in that suspended moment she thought about the dealership windows she used to walk past on her way to school, about the Ferrari she once imagined parking in front of her mom's house just to prove something to the neighbors, about the baby inside her that would grow up learning the same lessons she had just learned tonight. And she realized that this wasn't really about him anymore or even about the ransom money that might never come through. This was about power, about control, about deciding whether she would remain someone who waited for permission to belong or someone who forced the world to recognize her existence by any means necessary. The shot didn't echo like in the movies either. It cracked sharply and then disappeared into the insulation of the basement walls, the hostage's head snapping back against the chair before his body went still in a way that made the diamond chain around his neck look heavier than ever, and for a few seconds nobody moved, not Wesley, not Vane when he finally ran downstairs, not even Suelen herself as she stared at what she had just done, realizing that whatever innocence she had left wasn't gone because of poverty or lack of opportunity. It was gone because she had just traded it willingly for a chance at a life filled with luxury cars, jewelry, and stacks of money she might never even get to spend. The first thing Suelen noticed wasn't the blood, it was the silence that followed it, the kind of silence that doesn't feel empty but crowded, like the air itself is holding its breath, and when Vane finally snapped out of it and started cussing under his breath, pacing in a tight circle like a man whose plans just got punched in the mouth, Suelen didn't flinch or cry or collapse the way people expect a 16-year-old to do, because her face had already changed somewhere between that laugh of rejection and the pull of the trigger, and now she wore a calm that didn't belong to a kid, a calm that belonged to somebody who had crossed a line and realized the other side has no return address. Wesley moved fast, not frantic, just practiced, grabbing the hostage's watch and chain as if time itself was money and every second mattered, wiping fingerprints like he was erasing a story before it could be told, and he barked short instructions the way ex-military guys do when panic starts spreading, telling Jacare to bring the trash bags, telling Vane to kill the lights, telling Suelen to keep her head straight and her mouth shut. And as she stood there watching them strip luxury off a dead body like it was a clearance sale, it hit her how strange it was that the same Rolex she used to worship on a screen now looked like nothing more than a shiny piece of metal, because the fantasy had cracked. Money didn't look like freedom down here, it looked like bait, like a trap that dragged everybody into the dark. They hauled the body out before sunrise, driving through quiet streets where sprinklers hissed on perfect lawns, where American flags hung neatly on porches like the whole neighborhood believed in order, and Suelen stared out the window at all that calm, thinking how wild it was that two worlds could sit side by side like that, the suburban dream on one side and the hood reality on the other, separated by nothing but a few miles and a different zip code, and she realized the rich didn't just have more money, they had more protection, more distance from consequences, more space to pretend violence is something that only happens to other people, until it happens to them, and then suddenly it's breaking news, suddenly it's a tragedy, suddenly it's unthinkable, even though in Suelen's world the unthinkable had been normal since childhood. Back at the stash house, the crew started celebrating too early, talking big about what they'd buy once they got their hands on real payouts again, arguing about whether a Hellcat was better than a Trackhawk, whether it's smarter to grab a used Bentley or a brand new Range Rover, laughing about diamond grills, about iced-out Cuban links so heavy they'd make your neck tilt, about walking into a mall in downtown Atlanta and buying everything in cash just to watch security guards switch from suspicious to respectful, and Suelen tried to let that talk wash over her like warm water, tried to feel excited, tried to feel like she had finally earned her ticket into that life. But deep in her chest there was a quiet heaviness, because the truth was she didn't feel richer, she felt colder, like her heart had put on armor the moment the gun went off. Then the call came, the ransom deal had collapsed, total mess, the family got spooked, law enforcement sniffing around, bank wire frozen, and Wesley slammed his fist into the counter so hard the cheap would cracked, because now the whole plan was upside down, and the murder wasn't even necessary in the business sense, which made it worse in a way nobody wanted to say out loud, and Suelen stood in the corner listening, stomach tight, hand resting unconsciously near her belly as if the baby could feel the tension too, and she heard Vane mutter something like, "We didn't even get paid," and that phrase hit her like a slap, because it exposed the ugliest truth. She had traded innocence for nothing but a moment of power, and power without profit turns into paranoia real fast. That paranoia settled into her like a second heartbeat, because now every siren outside sounded personal, every helicopter overhead felt like it was circling her name, every unexpected knock made her jump, and she started noticing how crime changes the way you see life. Simple things stop being simple, a trip to the gas station becomes a mission, a casual glance from a stranger becomes a threat. And even the idea of luxury starts to rot, because what's the point of a flashy car if you're scared to drive it? What's the point of jewelry if it makes you easier to identify? What's the point of stacks of money if you can't sleep at night without seeing that basement chair in your head? And Suelen realized the hood doesn't just create criminals with poverty, it creates them with a constant pressure that makes fear feel normal and danger feel like a career path. Still, she adapted faster than anyone expected, and that's the part people don't like to talk about, because it's uncomfortable to admit how quickly a human being can normalize evil when survival and status are on the line. And Suelen started walking different, talking different, even laughing different. The softness drained out and got replaced by a sharpness, a readiness, like she was always bracing for impact. And she told herself stories to make it make sense, told herself the hostage was arrogant, told herself he was going to ruin them anyway, told herself she did what she had to do, told herself the world never gave girls like her a fair shot. And maybe that was partly true, but the scariest part was how good those lies felt, like a warm blanket over a cold conscience. By the time the sun came up, the neighborhood looked normal again, kids walking to school, buses groaning at the stop, people buying coffee like nothing had happened, and Suelen stood by the window with a cheap chain around her neck that suddenly felt heavier than diamonds, watching the light spill over the street, thinking about how she used to believe money was the main villain in her life, when really it was the obsession with money that had quietly turned into her religion, her compass, her excuse. And she realized she wasn't chasing luxury anymore. Luxury was chasing her in a different form, like a hunger that never gets full, like a dream that keeps demanding more sacrifice. And as Wesley told them, they had to lay low and possibly move to another city. Maybe Atlanta, maybe Houston, maybe somewhere they could disappear. Suelen didn't ask why or how, she just nodded. Because the girl who once wanted to shine had vanished, and in her place stood someone dangerous, someone who'd do whatever it takes, someone who had finally learned the darkest American lesson of all. Money doesn't just buy things. Sometimes it buys who you become. And now that you've heard Suelen's story, do you still believe money is always the way out? Or do you think sometimes it's the thing that traps you the most? At what point do dreams turn into desperation? At what point does ambition become something darker? Was it the poverty that pushed her there? Or was it the obsession with luxury, status, and power? I want to know what you think. Would you have made the same choices if you were in her place? And more importantly, which song should we turn into a story next? Leave your suggestions in the comments, any genre, any language. Because here, music isn't just something you listen to. It's something you live through. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story. That turns a melody into something unforgettable.